I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody. This may be the longest podcast we'll ever do. I just have a feeling this one's going to run
Bunch
long.
of good stuff.
Yeah, well, just warming up, everybody getting mics set. There's just been a dozen stories told already. Cuz has been here for most of them. Cuz was on time. Thank you, Cuz.
Yes, sir.
We got Toxie, you got here on time. Thank you.
Toxie time, I was early, 5 minutes late.
Dudley strolled in here, 2 minutes to spare. Thank you, Dudley.
Thank you.
And then I'll just keep on going after that. Lanny, did you have a flat tire?
I was trying to get here. I was on Toxie time.
Yeah. A for effort. Richie and John over there on the board. Guys, Rich, today, guys, we have some absolute outdoor legends. We've got the Wensel brothers, Barry and Gene. And through the magic of the internet, they're out in the Midwest somewhere, and it's the rut. And it's how we've got them. Peter, you're there also. I need to introduce you, and I cannot pronounce your last name to save my soul.
So it's Peter Yakovazzi, but I'm just here for fan support.
Yeah, well, Peter, we appreciate it, and but thank you for organizing this thing. We can't believe we've got the Wensel brothers on. Toxie, what are you thinking?
You're very
about this?
welcome. We've all been excited for this.
We talk about, and Bobby and I talked about what's something kind of generational or consequential other than, we have a lot of really cool guests on. And, he spouted off a few names from the past. And when I say generational, what I mean is not that they're old. I mean, old is great because it means you're still making it. But they're there from the very origins of our brand as partners and people that we looked up to and wanted to be wearing our stuff and listen to them. And here today we are, almost 40 years later. That's to me is consequential. And I told him, I said, if anybody, and I actually told this to Daniel.
We still like each other.
Yeah. I noticed I got y'all separated a little bit for now, though. And I was talking to Daniel about, people that were the real pioneers of what we do today. Mm-hmm. And their name would always come up first to me.
Yeah,
but, and not to mention their two-edged sword. They're characters with character.
They are characters.
Yes, they are, big time.
Because when you say the Wensels, what bubbles up in your mind first?
Oh my God, we spent so much time together. Just out of, first they were like the bow hunting people who were writing articles, and they had books and all that kind of stuff. And it took me forever to kind of run them down and talk them into getting in our camp. And from that point on, we made a lot of trips making TV with the Wensels, but it was, on a selfish point, it was because it was so much fun. They very unique. I told you when I sat down, I said, these guys should have been in the movies. They missed their chance being in the hunting industry because it was nonstop laughter. But the bottom line is, you look at their history of work when it comes to taking big deer with a recurve bow. There's nobody even close to how good these guys were. And look, I stayed out there on the Milk River with them for a long time, making drives, shooting deer from the ground. And they were just living legends, and they still are. But they were back then.
I have to say that, and it's important to me that our identity, we never started out trying to make a name for ourselves. We were just doing our thing that we really love to do. And we were blessed with the opportunities and the love and the knowledge. That's who we are. That's who we've always been.
And that's why it works so well.
Yeah. It just, here I am, we're 80 years old, 80.
That's awesome.
And I feel great. Barry has some health issues, but I'm doing really well. And I I hunt as much as I possibly can.
That's
you
awesome.
know, when I possibly can. I got my wife she has some real health issues, and I spend quite a bit of time with her. But I hunt not every day, but almost every day and that's I'm talking about right now. This year, this season, let's say. But I can go out. And that's another thing too. I can go out. I know a lot of people that they don't like to go hunting alone. It's and camaraderie is great. Don't get me wrong, but I can go out and fishing too. Same deal. I can go out and go fishing or go hunting or sit in a tree by myself and have a great time. I mean, it doesn't bother me. I mean, it's what I do. And there again, you have a buddy right now. Right now, I'm dependent on friends because I'm an old man and I cannot do what I used to be able to do just a couple year or two ago.
I said I'll mirror what Gene said and stuff, but as I said, a lot of things in life are in good timing, and we have been blessed to be able to spend our lives with our families. Are need to take a lot of credit because they allowed us to pursue our dreams, etc., and let us do our thing over the years. And as I said, if it wasn't for our families and the timing, um, we wouldn't have got done what we have accomplished. And the bottom line, Gene says, as far the bottom line is, we really enjoy sharing. In other words, I want to be able to hand down some of my strategies and techniques to the younger generations so that they too can enjoy life to its fullest, etc. So I can't think of almost anybody that, I mean, speaking for myself, who, if they had to live their life over again, I mean, there's almost nothing that I would have done differently.
Oh,
Well,
that's
So
I'll go against that a little bit, but I feel like in my older age, I feel guilty about how much that I used to not neglect is not the right word, but I would leave my family. There was many years went by where I was never home on Thanksgiving for a Thanksgiving dinner. It'd be a turkey sandwich in some restaurant that was open or wherever, but I spent a lot of time that I should have spent. I wish I would have spent more with my family, I've really been blessed. Let me put that way. My kids understand. My wife understands. She never got in my way. She didn't never said, I wish you wouldn't go there or you need to be here or that wherever. Um, she adapted to it, but now here I am at 80 years old, and I'm feeling guilty about not being. I shouldn't say less of a family man, but it was a part of my life that I just picked up and did it, and that was me being me. But here again, as you get older, you
just
look back.
an hour or so ago, I was telling the story about one Thanksgiving Day that I shot a big buck, and I ended up having on Thanksgiving Day. I ended up having Thanksgiving dinner were turkey franks that I bought in a Rip and Chip, gas station type of thing. So I agree with Gene. That's pretty hardcore when Thanksgiving Day you spend in a tree stand and
Well,
eating.
not only that, but you're in a tree stand a couple hundred miles from home.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like
yeah.
I'll be home now. I mean, I try and see my wife every day, and that's because I want to, and and I've been blessed, and it's just that's just the way I am. That's what I do, and that's how I do it. And it's not as
Okay.
important to me to kill a deer or kill a big deer every year or whatever. It's just it's picking and choosing and doing what feels right to myself. So
Hey guys,
anyway.
it sounds like a lot of wisdom is
Oh, my gosh.
is bubbling up.
I mean, it's
out.
just it's whatever the seminal moment. What's it called? I mean, I get a little bit of chill bumps just to know that they're here to visit with us today, and we've had this long relationship, although we hadn't seen them in a while. But to listen to their lifetime of wisdom is such a gift, and we're going to be able to share that with people, regardless if it's something simple or something kind of earth shaking. You know, he talked about you having a few regrets about that, but I mean, he was born to do that too. I mean, you know, when people get and you'll see when I say that all the time, you can see when some, just like Dudley with trees, when you're doing what God puts you here to do. And, you know, they were put here among a lot of other things, but to spend time in the woods like they did too. So, and blessed to have the family to support them to do it. So,
yeah, right. And I don't know if you would refer to that as a calling, but you know,
somewhat, yes.
You guys definitely impacted a lot of people. You know, everybody in this room, except for me, has spent time with you guys in the woods. But I feel like I have, because I've had your VCR tape, Primal Dreams, on repeat for 10 years in a row at the deer camp, and that was my inspiration to get out in the woods. My buddy Jack had that tape, and I think I made a copy of it, and I think that's probably one of the best deer hunting productions, the most real productions I've ever seen.
Let me explain how that came about. Barry and I, especially Barry, actually carried cameras. He was taken in high school, basically, you know, 8mm, and then Super 8, and then High 8, and then VHS, and then, you know, from there on. But we had cameras with us, and mostly Barry, like I said, but I did too. And I got a lot of footage. We just had cameras and didn't go out to necessarily film our kills, but just film the deer. And our friends, the Mitten brothers, Mike and Mark and David, they're top shelf whitetail hunters, and all three of them are really into cameras. And the five of us got together and said, you know, we need to put something together for our grandkids. You know, we got a lot of really good footage here, and we started looking at it, and it was, I had to say, it's very impressive. But we had stuff that just we got together, we spent some money on music, but there was no sponsors, no, you know, zoom in to see what brand of binoculars you're using or whatever. We just did it for our kids. And then we realized, wow, this is, you know, and when that came out, I mean, I remember we had a guy from National Geographic called us, and who are you guys? You know, where'd you come from? What do you got? You know, just a bunch of brothers, 5 brothers that spent a lot of time in the woods. But that's the way it turned out, you know. And that actually, Primal Dreams was not, everybody in there carried a bow and arrow, but it wasn't really about bow hunting. It wasn't really, actually, it wasn't really about hunting as much as it was about why people hunt. Mm-hmm. And that's the message we got out, you know. And
so why do you think it is that people hunt? While we're here,
why?
Let's ask that question.
Why do people hunt? Oh.
I think every human being is born with an instinct to hunt. Now, some people will deny that, but I mean, you put a baby on the floor in a diaper and put a turtle on the rug 5 feet from him, and he'll kind of sneak up on it. You know, he'll go towards it or trying to catch it, or a frog or whatever. But that's a form of hunting, you know. It's in our system. Some people, hey, it's like anything else, you know, you either take to it or you feel like you're doing something wrong, or you're more interested in ball games or whatever, you know. But it's to a point where different levels of interest, you know. I as an analogy, there's a lot of people that love football, let's say we're using that as an example. They love football, but just because they love football doesn't mean they're going to play football really well. You know, a lot of people go to the games, but you know, you get two guys that are built very physically very equal, and one of them can be a outstanding uh, professional football player, and the other one is selling cars or whatever, you know, and it's just things you pick up and hone, I guess, or fine tune. But I really honestly would believe that if the truth were known, hunting is 100% instinct. It's bred into us.
Yeah.
It's just that's the way we are.
It was
Cuz, you
sure
got a
bred into
question?
me.
Hey, Gene, do you remember when I interviewed you out in Texas and that question came up and you started your answer with the death of the BB gun? Can you remember talking about the death of the BB gun? Because that's one of the most
Yeah.
epic interviews we ever did. You remember that?
I kind of remember it, but you know, there was a point. Well, here again, we're talking the late 40s. You know, Barry and I were born in 1944. In the late 40s and the early 50s, back in that era, um, our our lifestyle, you know, people still live off the land, and all mothers stayed home. They were, you know, stay-at-home moms. They didn't have to work, but kids were issued BB guns. You just, it's like when you were a certain age, here, you know, here's your BB gun. And I talked to, and this is really fascinating because I can't remember. It's been 4 or 5 years ago. I was talking to, and I can't remember who the man was or where I was, but he said his son just got back from basic training in the United States Army, and he said whatever it is, 200 and something men, whether it's a unit, a platoon, whatever it is. But anyway, he had 200 and something new recruits, all right, in this out at the range, and only I can't remember. It was like 6 or 8% of them had ever shot a gun before. They, you know, they knew about guns, but they didn't really know how to shoot, you know, and that has its good side too, because if you start off with and develop a bad habit, it's going to be bows and arrows or guns or whatever. But if you start out and develop a bad habit, or one, you know, right eye, left eye dominant or whatever, or I need to go lefty, righty, and all that sort of thing. But if you start out and build a bad habit, but these new recruits, they're taught how to shoot. And I mean, some of the finest marksmen, snipers, and long range shooting, you know, I mean, it's something that it's in deep there, and yet it's not necessarily, they can build onto it. Let's put it that way, you know. But it just blew me away that how many young men had never shot a gun before, you know, and just it was just. And here again, I guess it probably depends on what part of the country you get down in the South, like you know, down where you guys live. You know, but getting back to the BB gun, you know, it's like kids don't do that anymore. You know, they just. Um, I remember when Barry and I were kids, we shot bows and arrows from the time we just never put our toys away, and we would shoot stuff. And back in the time where um, it's hard to put it into words. The reason we were doing it was because it was fun. I remember my dad had a hunting, or my dad and mom, we had a hunting camp upstate New York, and we would go over there. My dad was a groundhog nut. He started, I think he had a 22 Hornet back in the 40s, and he went to a 222 and 243 or whatever. And he hunted with a longbow. I remember seems like he killed a whitetail and a black bear in 1953. Um, but you know, he had a longbow, and that's what he hunted with back there. You know, I mean, it was very, very very few people that even hunted with bows, and you just had it's something you got into and developed type of thing, But back then, anyway, starting out and getting wrapped up into something, and it just grows on you, and it turns into who you are, And
But
I feel safe.
it also ends up as being a sport that you can do when you're 80 years old, as long as
Yeah.
you can still get around and see, et cetera. I mean, I feel bad where, like Gene mentioned earlier, a kid that really likes football, he plays Sandlot, and then if he's, goes to high school and maybe plays in high school. If he's really good, he might go to college. If he's really, really good, might play for, the NFL or something. But that all comes to a slam and halt when he turns 35. It'd be like somebody saying to me, when you turn 35, you're not going to be able to hunt anymore, type of thing. Whereas it's physically, we can hunt as long as we can still get around and see, et cetera, type of thing. So it's a lifelong sport, adventure, whatever you want to call it, that you're able to do till the day you die.
So let me ask the first question, and then Lanny, you better wake up over there now.
I'm awake.
Coming at you real fast. Barry, I want to ask you, which one of you brothers are the better hunter?
Oh man, that was my question.
Barry probably should answer that because he lies a lot. No, here
That's
again.
the problem. See, I don't lie, but I have to admit, stuff happens to me all the time. I've busted. I got 12 screws and 2 plates in my right arm. I busted my shoulder, busted ribs. I got pins in my knee. He's never busted. Well, yes, he did. I broke his collarbone tackling him in football one time, but nothing ever happens to him. But I get treed by grizz. I got charged by, mountain lion. I shot that mountain lion out of the air while it was jumping on me with a recurve and
Good
stuff.
Lord.
I've been treed by grizz. Since I wrote that book about, which by the way, I'm bringing back out after 15 years, about all the stuff that's happened to me. And I was hesitant on writing it because I thought there's no way all this stuff happens to one guy. Well, the hard truth is it does. And there's even stuff. I got charged twice in one day by feral hogs and had to shoot them in, hand-to-hand combat, kill them with a bow type of thing. I got a busted arm out of that deal. And it's not like I'm fragile, but stuff happens to me all the time. But over the years, I would say that I probably have spent more time. It's a saturation factor. I've spent more time in the timber than Gene has, but nothing against that. But I'm just saying, just as a saturation factor, when you're out there, stuff's going to happen to you more often and stuff, But as I said, a lot of this stuff, because we're identical twins, I've always been a big believer in the analogy of, 2 heads better than one. And it was almost unfair sometimes where he and I would go into an area and he would pick up some facts about that area and I would pick up some facts about that area and we would exchange ideas. So it was, as I said, 2 heads better than one type of thing, but we walked away with, the knowledge of maybe more so knowledge than one guy doing it on his own type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, I don't think it.
Here again, there's a line there that a lot of people have to realize that why we're out there and the way we do things. Barry spends more time in the woods, and I should say, but I've spent a lot. We actually disagree on several subjects. We can get into a debate back and forth. For instance, I don't believe a buck, and don't interrupt me, Barry. I don't believe he thinks a deer knows it leaves a silhouette. All right. And they won't walk a ridge line because they're leaving a silhouette. And I said, that's baloney. You know, they all pay attention to silhouettes. They see a movement on the skyline and they're locked into it. What's that movement? All right. But they don't, when they're walking a skyline, they don't say, oh, I'm going to walk down over the side of this ridge because I don't want to leave a silhouette. That's not the way it works. You know, it just,
I
I
agree
don't
with
believe
that. That's not the way it works because that's reasoning, and a deer
Yeah,
can't
and we go. That's
reason.
another one. We go back and forth
Reason,
about
but
reasoning.
the fact that they can't reason, but they do things instinctively. And what
No,
you're
they do.
terming,
They do
what you're
reason to a
terming
point.
reasoning, I'm saying is instinct.
Yeah, but all I'm saying, I think deer do have an ability to reason up to a point, but they don't say, when I come to this fork in the trail, I think I'm going to go left because the winds come out, you know, that sort of thing. You know, if we could have deer talking, if we could, if a deer ever spoke English and we started asking them why they did certain things, they would laugh their butts off, you know, because a lot of people read into stuff
Right.
much more than what reality is. They're a prey species. They have always been a prey species. We are predators. We have always been predators. Our job is to hunt deer, you know, and they're living their own life. And then you again, they're the white-tailed deer being able to adapt to mankind so easily. I mean, you get a deer that lives in a suburban deer, lives in neighborhoods, eats in somebody's lawn or whatever, you know, on a golf course or whatever. You know, those deer have accepted humans. They don't trust them, but they accept them much more so. You know, some of the hardest deer to hunt are these mountain deer, you know, back off way back up in you know, in the mountains type of thing, because they see very few people. They're covering a lot of ground. The buck to doe ratio might be pretty good, but the numbers of deer aren't out there, you know. Anyway, a lot of it has to do with how a person puts this all together, and you know, how you feel about.
Let
I
me
hate to say
let me interject.
overthinking. I hate to say overthinking too much. What?
I lost. I was going to interject something, and you kept talking, and now I lost it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that. Welcome to my world.
Yeah.
We can fix that.
Lanny, you got a question?
Yeah, just you know, it's kind of cliche, but just want to know, you know, what of all the hunting y'all have done, what are you know, I guess the most memorable hunts for each one of you?
What is your most memorable hunt?
Most memorable? Probably, I don't know, that buck I killed in 2011. I missed him in 2009. I got a deflection, and I pursued him in 2010. And while I was, well, I named that buck Hurley because when the arrow went over top his back, I felt like hurling. So anyway, Hurley, that was my target buck for 2010. And I ended up having it was a Boone and Crockett 8-point, which is
Wait a minute. I got to interrupt you.
No. I'm in the
Here's
middle
a
of
perfect example. I was the guy that named that buck Hurley. You didn't name him Hurley. I said if I missed that buck, I'd feel like hurling.
Take your bow. Take your bow. Right. Anyway, my point is that 2010, I shot a Boone and Crockett because he walked up 14 yards and stood broadside and looked the other way, and I lost control. And then I continued to hunt Hurley and ended up going, you know, that next year and figuring out his pattern and ended up getting him in fact, it was November 1st, 2011 type of thing. And as I said, the fact when you pick one particular specific animal and figure out his routine and capitalize on your thought pattern. In other words, figure out what he's doing, why he's doing it, and then get there before he does, and then execute the shot, etc. Then you know that was extremely rewarding. There was nothing I've done over the years.
Mine has to be my love affair with the buck I named Woody. that the biggest buck I've ever killed, the biggest buck I ever will kill. And a lot of people, yeah,
There he
There he
is.
is.
Oh my gosh.
Goodness. Bobby,
yes.
calm down, Bobby.
Anyway,
Does he have double drop tines?
I think he did.
yeah, you got 4 of them. I couldn't have built a prettier rack. He's like 25 and a half inside, and he's got none of the, I call them no cheater points. All the brow tines, the main beams are heavy, a lot of heavy forks, drop tines, got, just as I couldn't have built a rack and made it any prettier. But that being said, a lot of people equate the intelligence of an animal. In other words, if you got a Boone and Crockett buck, just because he's wearing a Boone and Crockett set of antlers or Boone and Crockett class set of antlers doesn't mean he's smarter than any other 5.5-year-old or 6.5-year-old buck. Just because some of the smartest deer on the face of the earth, to be honest with you, are does. But you get an old buck that he may 5-6 years old, and his rack might score 125, or whatever, depending on what part of the country it comes from. But Boone and Crockett class, big, huge antlers, they don't equate that deer smarter than the other 5-6-year-old deer, and a lot of people get mixed up with that. But we're hunting an animal here again, a 5-year-old animal, a 6-year-old animal. He's got the miles, and he's got the experience, or it's probably not the right word for it, but he's been there, done that, and figured out things. The older they get, the more intelligent they get, But anyway, there's a lot of guys
that was the thought pattern I lost there 5 minutes ago. I've mentioned this recently. I've had a lot of guys over the years ask me, what one specific trait do you think some of all the really good whitetail hunters possess? And I've had guys say, a really good whitetail, he has to have good eyes, or he has to be self-employed, or he has to be divorced, or whatever. But my point is, I put a lot of thought in that. And the one trait that I have seen that every good whitetail hunter I've ever met in my life, really good ones, the one trait that they all possess is they're all thinkers. They slow down and think about what they're seeing and why they're seeing it, and then are able to think about the fact, how can I capitalize on this if it is a chink in the armor, so to speak. So as I said, if I used to be, in my opinion, I used to be negative on that too. I used to brag about the fact I could run through I'd turn me loose in 200 acres of hardwoods or whatever, and I could run through it. And I was pretty good at it, frankly, but I could pick a good tree, but I would do that in 6 hours. Whereas now that I've gotten older, it's not that way anymore. And that's one of the again, good points of old age is you have to slow down. But by slowing down, you're picking up details. And I always use that analogy of like a doctor looking at an x-ray. You slap an x-ray up on a screen, and it's just the average guy, layman, look at it, and he'll say, oh yeah, there's the pelvis, there's the spine, there's the skull, etc. But a doctor looks at it, and he's looking for details. He's looking for calcium infiltration or disc relationships, hairline fractures, little tiny details. And that's what we have to do as extreme whitetail hunters. In other words, slow down and look at the details, and ascertain what it all means, et cetera, and think about what you're looking at and stuff, and how it can help you, in your pursuit.
I'll add something else, and I have to carefully word this, but the younger guys that are hunting now, a lot of them are watching TV and learning how to hunt from television shows. And not there's anything wrong with that, but a lot of them, you need these guys need to get in the woods, again. I mean, granted, food plots and shooting houses and that sort of thing, they're hunting deer, but nobody gets in the woods anymore. I mean, I say nobody. Very few guys actually go out and get in the woods and figure out what's going on. Here again, I'm a big believer, and maybe this goes the wrong way, but I'm a big believer in trail cameras. I think of them as camera traps. I want to know, the main reason is because I want to know there's a bigger one in that same neighborhood. I'll pass up a deer that's very tempting if I know there's a bigger one in that neighborhood, where if I don't know, it's all a mystery. And I really like the mystery part of it. But that being said, I like to get in the woods, read the sign, make a decision, make a plan, and climb up a tree and pay attention and kind of figure out, this is what I'm going to do today, or this is what the deer might do today. But
you also have to have it play out. In other words, I see a lot of guys are pushing the envelope, pushing, trying to make it happen and stuff. Guys will come up to us at shows and say, they'll explain their specific scenario. And, I mean, the big one, he's in there. I know he's in there. I got pictures of him, and I haven't seen him. What am I doing wrong? Well, you might not be doing anything wrong. It just hasn't happened yet. Give it time to play out. Set your stage, and I say, plan your hunt and hunt your plan type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when that does finally all come together, there's nothing more, gratifying than having your plan come out and, the way you thought it might.
Yeah, I bet that. Dudley, what you got? I know you got a question.
Well, I got questions for both of them. I guess I'll direct this one to Barry for now. So, a lot of our audience hunts with a compound bow. You guys have always used traditional equipment as far as I know. Is there any tips or a major tip that you can offer to the stereotypical compound bow shooter that, using the traditional archery style has helped you along the way? Is there something you can share that not many compound hunters use that can help them?
I might not be the best guy to answer that because I've never hunted with the compound ever. I mean, all I've ever shot in my whole life is recurves and stuff. And I shoot differently than Gene. I shoot instinctively. And over the years, a lot of that, I quote, became the one that started, shooting running animals and stuff, because the hard truth was I lived on a golf course and I used to practice running shots. It was infested with gophers, they called them.
Golfers had gotten away.
Yeah, right. No, but I'm saying I would, when I would make every day and all summer long, I would make my rounds and I'd get 50, 60, 70 shots with my bow at a live target. And when I saw them running toward the hole, in other words, if I saw a gopher at 30 yards and I could sneak up to 10, I wouldn't. I'd sneak up to 25. And then when he'd break for the hole, I could have shot, waited till he got to the hole and shot at him as a stationary target, but I would shoot at him running and stuff. And I became, not bragging, but I became very good at it and stuff. But a lot of the younger guys need to realize, that I am not. People over the years, I am not that good of a shot. I've never shot target, field archery or anything. I've never shot a 3D course in my life that I remember, but walking in the woods, my practice was at pine cones or, cow plops or whatever type of thing. I would take one shot and I would just take one shot. I don't take one shot and I shot high, hold lower, or compensate for it until I get I would take one shot, go pick up my arrow and keep varying my distances. So I was practicing my hunting skills with a bow in the woods, not sitting in a food plot and ranging the deer. And I don't care what the next guy does, but I mean, I prefer to be in the woods, and I set up my situations for close range where, I mean, I like my shots to be between 12 and 15 yards, hey,
Let me,
again,
Barry, your time is up.
All right, next.
I've never
good.
actually, you might not believe this, but I've never actually shot an arrow out of a compound bow. I've pulled a couple of them back many years ago, and it when that breaks over, it kind of blows my concentration, blows my rhythm, blows my it's like shooting pool and having somebody bump you, or I don't like that breakover thing. And I just, even though it drops off, and back in the old days it only dropped off 10, 15, 20 pounds or whatever, but now it's just I don't have any interest in it. I mean, I've shot a longbows and recurves all my life, and it's just it's something that's the way I am. A lot of the younger guys and the guys that are just getting into this, they see guys on TV making 80-yard shots or 60-yard shots or whatever. And it's like, I don't want to see how far I can hit them. I want to see how close I can get to the deer. I don't even want them.
There it is. I've been waiting to
I
talk
want
about
them
it.
inside the
Texas.
20-yard line.
So-
Preferably 12 to 15 yards. Not too close, but not too far either. And I know I'm going to hit them at that distance or hit them well. But I want to see the eyes. I want to see the deer's personality.
Bingo. That's it right there.
Hey guys, listen up. Let me tell you about an awesome deal Springfield Armory is offering now through the end of 2024. When you purchase a brand new model 2020 Waypoint or Redline rifle, you'll receive a model 2020 Rimfire rifle with a black synthetic stock absolutely free. That's an over $400 value on the house. You know we love Springfield Armory and their top-notch products you'd be proud to hand down to your kids and grandkids. So why wait? Learn more about this incredible offer at GearUp2024.com. Springfield Armory. Defend your legacy.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
So I got to say, of all the stuff that, and I wrote a bunch of it down just if it came up, and since this came up, I would say this is probably number one, that they kind of helped me crystallize my thinking. And I have to tip the hat to both of them, because the relationship was so early when we first started, Cuz, just a couple of us. And because, especially more than anything because of Cuz, but we all became friends. I just want to be sure y'all understand, after like almost 40 years and what's going on today with us, y'all had a major impact, almost right along with just a couple of pioneering people, have an impact on the culture of the Mossy Oak brand and where it is gotten to today. But you said to me, and I remember where I was. We in the back parking lot downtown behind the regional office there. And it's like that you were concerned with, although you were for anything that was more accurate, no problem with that. Is that you were concerned with the increasing confusion with younger hunters, the difference between archery and bow hunting. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean difference between archery and bow hunting? He was like, and then you told me, he said, so let's think about it. Archery is how far you can be from the target and still hit the bullseye. So archery is how far. Bow hunting is how close you can get yourself to the critter. So if you want to get down to the pure definition of it, one is about how far and one is about how close. And it just set a light bulb off with me, the love of bow hunting is about being closer and being silent, and the immense, more huge challenge of taking one with archery. And I've never killed but like one deer with a recurve bow. So I mean, I love it. It's all bow hunting. So I'm good either way. But I think it is really important to bring that to bear even today. As stuff gets better and better, and crazy accuracy at longer distances, that doesn't mean that's the thing we should be doing. And I'm a philosophical guy and the big picture person. I'm the nut job for that stuff around here and always have been. And that's such a great philosophical thing for people that bow hunt to think about. Mm-hmm. Bow hunting is how close.
Yeah, let's let them answer that.
I'm really good at those 10-yard shots too.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, but to get them that close, you probably have to pay attention to your clothes being noisy. I mean, every detail makes a difference.
You got to find yourself a good camo pattern too.
That too.
I hear you.
Yeah, you do. Amen.
And before
I got a mossy oak vest, a mossy oak shirt, a mossy oak hat. I'm a company man. I'm telling you.
He is.
There you are.
No, do you guys make mossy oak underwear?
We sure do.
Actually, we do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just released some more yesterday.
I had a patent pending on men's underwear with bacon strips all over them. It never took off though.
Yeah,
the big silence.
Yeah.
Was that maple bacon or hickory smoked bacon?
Black pepper.
So,
anyway.
guys, I've got
next question.
Thick sliced.
I've got a serious question I'd like to ask. I'd love to come away from this podcast understanding what goes through y'all's minds when you're trying to pick the right tree to climb in to kill that Boone and Crockett deer in Iowa or wherever it is you're hunting. What all goes through your mind?
This one, because again, it depends on the situation. But I've said for years that, well, first of all, I used to run those boot camps, for 15 years, where I would take guys out and show them my own personal tree stands and explain how I hunted it, when I hunted it, et cetera, and stuff. But most people tend not to look at a big enough picture, meaning I would show them an example, and I picked that tree, okay, and I'd stand there and say, the reason I picked that tree, and you could go through 10 or 12 points. In other words, if you look to the north, there's a fence corner up there. That fence corner pinches them. They come south along that fence. They hit another pinch there. There's a place to crawl under that. Okay, then they come out, and it's an easy place to cross the creek. Then they come up on the ridge, etc. Behind me, to the south, for example, there's a pond there. They can't walk across the water. They got to go around one side or the other. All these land contours and terrain features add up to where you're going to set up on that particular animal. So it's not just like this looks like a good spot or this is better than another. It's consistency in wind direction, your approach, entrance, exit type of thing, where you're not disturbing the area and you have a consistent pattern on different points where that's the tree. That's the tree. Let me say this, and I don't. It's okay to use his name. A friend of mine from Georgia, Wayne Hoffman. Okay, he drew a tag in Iowa one year, and he came out and he was frustrated. I kept seeing big bucks. I was hunting too, and I kept seeing big bucks. And he came and got me, and he says, "Pick a tree for me," type of thing. And it was pick it or what. And anyway, I took him and I pointed this tree out and I said, right there, hang your tree stand right there in that tree right there. And he said, why? And I said, it's a secret. I got to get back on my stand. I wouldn't tell him, right? Well, he hung a tree stand there. The next morning, he killed, it wasn't Boone, but it was 167 or something like that. Biggest buck of his life out of that tree. And he said, how do you know that stuff? And anyway, it ended up, I said, I kidded him at first and told him I wasn't going to tell him. But then I pointed out, I said, you look at the horizon up there and look at from point A to point B and stuff. And I said, what do you see? And he said, trees. And I said, seriously? No, what do you, he said, I don't see anything. And I said, you look, and from between that point and that point, there's a little bit of a bevel in that horizon where the elevation is like 2 feet lower and stuff. I said, okay. And he says, well, you telling me that they came by this tree because that was 2 feet? I said, no, but follow me. And I went up over the horizon, and I said, now look down there. I said, there's a point that comes out, and it's the shortest route between that drainage and this drainage. That is dictating their movement. And then once it gets into the timber, there's a bevel on the land. The understory bevels. And I said, look where it's going. And that bevel, ease of movement, happens to go right by that tree that you put your tree stand in, type of thing. And, oh, man, and I'm saying that a lot of guys need to think about what they're seeing and add things up. And you're not going to be right all the time, but it's just the longer you do it, the better you'll get at it, and the more experiences and that you'll you have the chance.
I gotta add a quick story. Years ago, I've hunted with Jack Nicklaus, the golfer, quite a few times, and one of the first times we hunted together, he shot a buck. I was guiding him, and he shot a buck, and we are on the blood trail. It wasn't bleeding very well, but we're on the blood trail, and he was following me. And this is on the Milk River, on the river bottom there. And the deer was following this ridge, and I saw where he took a left and went down over the bank. And I said, "Here, your buck. He turned left here." And Jack, being the type of guy he is, he said, how do you know? And I said, he just trust me. He turned left here, and and he says, no, literally, I can't see any blood. How'd you know that my buck turned left here and went down over that bank? And I said to him, I don't know. I just know stuff like that. That's why I'm a legend and you're not.
Hey.
Anyway, we found his deer, by the way.
Yeah, true story.
That's great.
Well, you guys are really good at picking that right tree, and I think there's so much. There's a lot to it, and I'm really. There's a guy behind the scenes, Mr. Barry. I think he's with you, Peter, and I cannot pronounce Peter's last name, but
Peter Yakovaji.
Yeah, that sounds.
You got it.
So he's telling me that you guys have trained him, taught him. He's learned a lot from you guys. And just recently he killed with a bow and arrow in Iowa, a Boone and Crockett whitetail. Peter, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I mean, am I getting this right? You've learned all this. What can you tell us about picking the right tree that you learned from these guys?
I learned a lot from Gene and Barry, because if I'm talking too loud, let me know. I learned a lot from Gene and Barry because I met them at such a young age. I met Gene when I was a kid in high school, just a high school kid from Jersey. And then I went to visit him in Montana, and then subsequently met Barry. And, you talk about the effect they've had on you, Toxie and Ronnie, and the Mossy Oak, just the Mossy Oak brand. They had a profound effect on me as a young bow hunter. I didn't grow up bow hunting. I was self-taught, and I wasn't very good. And then all of a sudden I went from being a kid in Jersey that was happy to shoot a doe to now I'm hunting all over Montana with Gene and Barry literally as my mentors. So I paid attention to the things that they told me over the years, and what they've been saying during this podcast is very true. What I learned from them of the many things is that it's a game of chess. And, the deer is a player on the chessboard, and so are you. And basically the chessboard is the wilderness. It's where they live. And you have to kind of figure out who's going to win the chess game. If I make a move here and he makes a move there, what I learned the most from Gene and Barry is put the sign together. If there's a trail going east to west, why is it going east to west? If there's a series of rubs here and scrapes here, why are they there? They're just not there by accident. If you're seeing deer here in the morning, but not here in the evening, why are they traveling here in the morning? Why are they traveling here in the evening? So recently, I bought a farm in Iowa, and the owner showed me the sheds of a very nice buck. He was knocking on the door of Boone and Crockett. And he said to me, I'll make a deal with you. You can have these sheds if you kill this buck. But I have to warn you, I've owned the farm for many, many years. I've been hunting him for 2 years. I've never seen him during the daytime, and I don't think you can kill him, especially with a longbow. And he wasn't being a wise guy. He was just being honest. And I said, well, I'm going to do my best. I'll figure it out. What I started to do was what Gene told me to do. He said, learn your farm. It's 120 acres. You've got a lot of ground to cover, but learn it. Put cameras up at various places around the farm. Get an idea for what deer are on your farm and how they're moving. And then Barry said to me, look for places that wouldn't normally be hunted. The previous owner had some great tree stands in areas that he hunted, but there was a lot of the farm that was untouched. And he would say, oh, I don't go down in there. That's too thick, or that's hard to get in and out of, or that's a sanctuary. And I respected that because that was how he hunted it. But he also never saw this big buck during the daytime. So I started getting pictures of this big buck pretty regularly. And I was getting pictures of him in the daytime, but I began to notice, like Gene said, put the pieces of the puzzle together. Where are you getting pictures of this deer? Where do you think he's going to be, and why do you think he's going to be there? And Gene kind of helped me determine, well, that's likely his core area. You're getting pictures of him all over the farm, but you're getting more pictures of him in a certain area. That's probably his core. So focus on that area. So I started to focus on that area. And, like a lot of guys today, I pulled out my Onyx and I started looking at terrain features. And because I've grown up hunting with Gene and Barry, I've never been much for hunting over food or food plots or out of a blind. I'm not against it. I just don't know how to do it. I've always Gene and Barry have always said, look for pinch points, look for funnels, look for areas that are very thick that a buck is going to feel very comfortable traveling during the daytime. And Gene told me something once that really struck a chord. He said, remember, a deer is only a few feet high. So don't look for areas that are thick 10 feet in the air. Look for areas that are thick, low to the ground. That could be a brushy draw. It could be a CRP field. It could be a creek drainage. That deer is going to feel more comfortable moving in a thick area where it's brushy. So I started looking at my Onyx and I realized that there was a creek that ran through my farm. And like most creeks, it had weaves and bends and bows in it. It didn't run straight. So I started to think, well, I bet you that deer probably spends some time in there. I picked a day when it was pouring rain and windy and miserable where you couldn't hunt. And I thought, I'm going to walk that creek and see if there's anything that makes sense. As soon as I got in that creek bottom that I'd never been in before, I bet you I found 25 scrapes in 300 yards. And it was just tore up with deer sign. And I said to Gene what I had found. And Gene said, I'll bet you that's where that big buck is living. And I said, okay, what do you think? He said, well, find a place where you think you can get in and out of without being caught and where you can ambush him. And then I go back to what Barry had taught me. You don't pick a tree because it looks like a great tree for your tree stand. Pick a tree because it looks like a great tree for a buck to walk by. So as a longbow shooter, I wanted to limit my shot to about 20 yards on both sides of this narrow funnel. Well, I picked an area that had a tight bend in the river, in the creek. So I knew that if the buck walked down this funnel, he'd have to go around that bend that would bring him closer to a likely tree. And then I knew, well, if he's walking east to west or west to east, I've got to be able to get in, because Gene has always told me it doesn't make any sense to get a good spot if you walk in and bust deer out in the morning or bust them out in the evening. So I realized I could get in the creek and I could literally walk up this nasty, gnarly creek without being detected. Then I found a tree that just seemed to feel right. Like Barry said, Barry's always said, you pick a tree, have a dozen reasons why you picked that tree. So I started to think, okay, well, this tree is off of a side hill. This tree is on a tight bend in the river. This tree has a lot of sign to the west of it. This tree has this. So I started to put the pieces together. I put the tree stand up and then I called Gene. I said, I got the spot. He says, great. Now don't hunt it until the wind is right, until it's the time to go in there. So I set my tree stand up. I waited a day. I hadn't gotten any other pictures of that buck. And I thought, well, maybe he's off the farm now. And then the morning came when I told Gene I had a good wind. He said, slip in there early as you can, get in that tree, and trust that you made a good decision. So morning came, I woke up and it was pouring rain. And I had put a camera over a scrape that was 10 yards from the tree. And I had not gotten any pictures on this scrape yet. I get up, it's pouring rain, the wind is howling. I looked at the weather. The weather said it was going to do that until about midday. So I thought, well, I better go back to bed because this wouldn't be the day to get in that tree. I go back to bed. I get up around 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm doing my normal routine. And I happen to look at my cell camera that, like we all do during this time of year. At 8:25, that buck was standing in the scrape 7 paces from my tree stand that morning. What I didn't tell you is the weatherman lied. At 8 o'clock, it stopped raining, the wind stopped blowing, and that deer was in that scrape. So I called Gene and I said, well, I blew it today. And I told him what I just told you. He said, you didn't blow anything. He said, you put all the pieces of the puzzle together. Now you know where you can kill that deer. So he said, now what you need to do is wait until everything is right and get in that tree and kill that deer. Well, the very next day, the wind was perfect and the weather was perfect. And I talked to Barry, and Barry said, hunt that stand in the morning, not the evening. And I asked Barry why, and he said, because in the morning, thermals are going to warm up and they're going to rise. So if the wind isn't in your favor, because of the thermals, you're going to be able to get away with more in the morning than you can in the afternoon. So all the pieces fell into place. I got up in the morning. The weather was perfect. I climbed in the tree. It was the first time I hunted that tree stand. I got in the tree about an hour before sunup. So after sitting there for about 3 hours, I hadn't seen a deer. And then at 9:05, I looked up the creek about 150 yards, and I could see a sapling just being bent over and looked like a bunch of kids trying to play with a tree. And I realized that's a buck. And I threw my binoculars up and I thought, please be that buck, please be that buck. Because Gene told me, you have other shooters on that farm, don't shoot them. Shoot this big buck because that's the one you want. He put his head up and I realized that's him. There he is. After a whole summer of seeing pictures of him, and the previous owner had never seen him in daylight, at 9:05, he was 150 yards away from me, and he was on a trail that would have inevitably have to take him by me. So I did what a lot of guys do. I got my iPhone out, and I started making little 20-second snippets of the deer. It took that deer almost 30 minutes to cover 150 yards. Every step he made was methodical. He'd walk 3 or 4 steps. He'd look around. He'd walk a little bit more. He'd look around. And I kept videoing and I kept videoing. And I think because I was videoing him, I forgot I was hunting. So I didn't get a chance to get nervous. And then he got to 25 yards and I realized it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, that little voice says, turn your phone off and put it in your pocket and kill this deer. So he took 2 steps and he was right in my shooting lane at about 20 yards with my longbow. And I picked up that bow and I started to draw and he snapped his head up. And I thought, oh boy, he's got me. Well, he didn't have me. I just thought he did. But, I shoot a fairly heavy longbow. So trying to hold a heavy longbow back at about a quarter draw isn't that easy for more than about 20 seconds. And I thought, man, I'm going to blow it. And then I thought, well, maybe I can squeeze a shot in between those 2 branches. And then I remember Gene telling me, take the best shot you can when you have it. Don't rush any shot. He said, you've got a whole month to hunt this deer. Make sure you make it count. So then I thought, okay, you know what? I'm not going to rush this shot. I don't have to try to snake it between 2 branches. I've figured the deer out. I won. If I don't get a shot today, it's okay. I'll get a shot the next time it's right to be in this tree. And then I slowly let down the bow, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a white flag. And I realized the buck was never looking at me. There was 2 does right behind me. And I just froze, and he locked and turned his head at the 2 does. And when he did, he took 1 step forward and everything went into slow motion, like larger than life. And I wish I could tell you, I pulled back and I held for 3 seconds. I let that feather touch the center of my nose. But sometimes, when it just feels right, it just feels right. And I just looked at the center of his rib cage. I pulled back. I felt that longbow hit its peak draw, and I let it go. And it was that moment where you could hear the echo of the smack throughout that whole bottom. And I hit him on the last rib on the on side, and it went through the offside and came out right through his heart. And I shoot a big, a wide four blade broadhead, an iron will single bevel, 200 grain wide, and it just blew right through him. And he didn't even know he was hit. He just turned and ran because the does all ran. And I watched him run off about 150 yards. And then I have a ritual I always do. I always bring a thermos of coffee with me. And that'll force me not to get down and start chasing after a deer I've just hit. So I hung up my bow. It was 9:32 when I shot him. And I sat down, I poured myself a cup of coffee. And then I said, no matter what happens for 30 minutes, I'm going to drink coffee. And as I sat down, all of a sudden I realized, wow, both of my legs are really shaking a lot. I was like a teenager again. So I finished 2 cups of coffee and I just forced myself. And at 10:02, I climbed out of that tree stand. I walked over to where that deer was standing. I marked it off at 21 paces. And before I found the arrow, I could see blood everywhere. So I walked about 40 yards and I could see the blood trail a blind man could follow. So I backed out because I didn't want to blow it. And I called my friend Cole, who lives here in Albia, who knows a lot more about killing big bucks than I do. And I told him the whole story and he says, I'll be right there. So I waited for him. And while I was waiting, I began thinking everything that led to killing that buck really was just, it was because of what Gene and Barry had taught me all these years. Take time, slow down, figure out where the deer is. There's no such thing as an unhuntable deer. If there's a deer there, he's killable. You just have to figure out when and where, because he doesn't disappear when the sun comes up and then magically come out when the sun goes down. He's got to be somewhere. And I just, like I said, I put together all the pieces of the puzzle. So long story short, Cole and I walked 150 yards. We found the buck that later taped out at 180 inches. And I guess the moral to the story is I killed him the first day I ever hunted him, the first time standing in that tree stand after only 3 hours. But when you really think about it, I had hundreds of hours into that deer, looking at trail camera pictures, calling Gene and Barry, looking at my Onyx, trying to figure out how am I going to kill this deer. So when it actually came right down to it, there wasn't as much luck involved as I wanted. You know, sometimes you hear it's better to be lucky than good. I was lucky in the sense that I've been lucky my whole life to have Gene and Barry mentor me, to tell me how I should do this and why I should do this. So, yeah, in many ways, killing that deer for me is a testimony to what I've learned from these two incredible guys. You know, I jokingly say,
let me say something, Pete. I've known you since you're a kid, literally, but you've always been a star student. You know, you're one of the best hunters I know, and you've made my life better for sure.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, it's just you've always been a student that pays attention and adapts to what you hear or what we do or what we know, and that puts
that's a rarity in itself.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's special, you know.
Oh,
but you're not, you know. And here again, I mean, we mentored a lot of kids or young people, I should say, that are, some of them are in 50, 60, 70 years old. But anyway, but you got to be a good student and pay attention. And there again, you know, maybe it just, you're not doing anything wrong. It just hadn't happened yet. You know, these guys get frustrated pretty easily, and they're not doing anything wrong. It just hasn't happened yet.
Fantastic.
So, you know, I mean, Bobby, I'll end this here because Gene and Barry are worth more talking to than me. But, you know, the moral to the story is really simple. I had a great big buck on a beautiful farm that I had to figure out how to hunt him. And Gene and Barry basically helped me move the pieces on the chessboard. And the rest was up to me. But, you know, people don't really realize the knowledge between these two gentlemen. You know, I jokingly say, Gene and Barry Wensel will forget more about deer hunting than most people will ever know in their entire life. And I know that because I've spent almost 45 years around them. Yeah, and I've seen them do things that I didn't understand why then, but I understand why now. And I think that's why I'm so excited they're on this podcast with you guys, because this new generation of bow hunters can learn so much from their lifetime of knowledge. I mean, it's incredible what you can learn from just a couple hours with these guys. Now imagine me having 45 years of walking the woods with these guys. So I'll end it at that. But yep, I killed my biggest buck with a longbow. I'm thrilled. I'm super excited. I got to share it with my good friend Cole. And it's just a culmination of years of Gene and Barry telling me why I should do the things I do. And at 9:32 in the morning on November 1st, it fell into place.
And that's his story, and
I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. Congrats, Peter. And so I'm looking across the room at Cuz. Cuz, you spent a bunch of camps with these guys. What questions should we be asking them to help us learn how to be better bow hunters?
Oh, they did. You got to remember, they were doing this stuff back in the day. No social media, no influences. They didn't care. The biggest deal they had a school where guys could come in and learn how to do it. They were doing it because they were just that good at it and that passionate. Some people just raised the bar when it comes to that. My question is, now look, when this all started with a video, and it wasn't the one Dudley was referring to. It was bow hunting October whitetails. The most and the first unbelievable hunting video I ever saw. Gene Biddlespacher and the Wensels and those guys shooting balloons out of rolling tires and all. I want to ask them two questions. Number one, what was life like after that video hit? And number two, is there any of those copies available anywhere? I would love to have one just to frame it, because that was epic.
We need a reissue.
We do.
Yeah, that was, again, Gene had just written his book, the first book, et cetera. And thereafter, I was approached about making some videos. And you have to realize this is in the early 80s. And consequently, there was like the information in Gene's book, which is now, common knowledge type of thing. At the time, it was not common. It was theory, which has since been proven fact. Well, that was the writing end of it. And then videos were just coming out. And frankly, I don't know if it's accurate or not, but I've been told that on bow hunting October whitetails, I shot 2 bucks, and both of them happened to be running. One running right to left and the other one left to right and stuff. And I made shots on them. And I tell people, everybody makes outstanding shots once in a while in their life, but I just happen to have a camera behind me when it happened and so forth. But the information and those shots were new material. It never been, I've been told it was the first 2 deer ever killed with a bow on production video, etc. So it kind of thrust me into the limelight, and everybody started, making other videos, et cetera, et cetera. But the knowledge that we put into those videos, basically, we just went hunting and filmed ourselves, each other hunting, bow hunting. And I think one of the main reasons it was so popular was not just because it was new, but because it was honest and truthful. In other words, the viewing public, they're not idiots. I mean, people look at it. I mean, I've seen it since where, everything is reenacted and they change everything and it's phony. Where these were honest, true, just, a couple guys going hunting and, filming themselves, etc. And one of the positive aspects of it was the humor. We're supposed to be out. That's why we're hunting. We're out there for having a good time and the humor. And yes, you have some light competition between each other. Ha, you missed, etc. But, it showed people that bow hunting is fun and you should be out there having a good time. But in the same respect, we were trying to teach people some of our techniques and theories, that when you look at that tape now, and then by the way, I do have some, they're still being printed. I mean, it's been 45 years ago. And I've been told it's the longest selling, hunting video ever produced, because they still make it now 45 years ago. But I've got them. I mean, it's, barrywensel@hotmail.com. I've got them myself, so you just remind me, cousin. I'll just send you one and stuff, you know. But as I said, it was ahead of its time because of what was captured on film and when it was taken and stuff. And as I said, it was my pleasure to help any of the viewers in their hunting, you know, down the road type of thing.
Absolutely epic. I want to ask you and Gene another question too, because I was fascinated hanging with you guys, even though I like to have froze slapped to death on the Milk River. Never been that cold in my life. Nobody had good gear.
I remember Toxie making fun because I had white boots on, those bunny boots on, because they were white and stuff, you know. But anyway, it doesn't matter when you're standing in a foot of snow what color your boots are.
Yeah, I would have paid big
we
dollar
had a
for
good
them.
time.
Oh, it was unbelievable. You know, y'all would make drives in the morning and then stand hunt in the afternoon. And I was trying to film wading through that snow. And we went to a cafe and I had some bibs, insulated bibs on, and I took them off to go in the cafe and hung them and then took my boots off. Well, the whole time we were eating, my bibs they were frozen solid. That was dripping into my boots. And then I put them boots back on and went and sat with Barry for 3 hours, and it was -5, if I remember right. And I was looking at him, and he was just normal. I was like, I need to get down, but I'm not getting down. I mean, that's Barry Wensel sitting over there. Then I went with Gene the next day, and my camera arm was frozen. I mean, I couldn't move it 1 inch. And they were so good at their approaches. I was like, I need to pull this arm apart and wax it. I had some bowstring wax. It was froze solid. And I moved it about 1/8 of an inch, and it went, and there's Gene Wensel looking back at me, and I've never felt so far out of my lane in my life. But anyway, I don't know, do y'all still, when you get to hunt some, I know Gene's having some issues, Barry hunts a little bit, do y'all still sharpen your own broadheads? Because I could watch y'all sharpen a single-edged broadhead for an hour. It was the coolest thing ever. Do y'all still do that?
Oh yeah, all the time.
It's an art form.
There's got to be a trick. There's got to be an
what
angle.
I do.
Yeah, that to me is fascinating. Mm-hmm. Dudley's nodding his head because that is a lost art in many camps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's like tying your own flies, you know. I mean, it puts something in it. There's an element of personal satisfaction. I enjoy getting the arrowhead really sharp and putting it to use, you know, and it's just part of what I do, or part of what I like to do. Anyway.
Well, it was the best video I brought from up there, and I'm sure Daniel's going to be looking at this pretty quick, was a tour of y'all's cabin, walking around. Y'all were gone, and I was touring that cabin. That to me was the coolest thing ever. You go in the kitchen, and the kitchen table's just covered in broadhead stuff, files, blood drops where they've nicked their finger. And right over behind the table, there's a huge 10-point buck, field dress, laying in the floor, frozen solid, and dirty dishes that had to be in there for weeks. But I was doing a play-by. Right. That was the coolest camp. Now, all the y'all's hunters were staying in a motel, but y'all made me stay down there with y'all. It was the coolest thing ever.
Breakfast, yeah.
Y'all remember that place?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, right. You know,
that was
I
home
remember
for
I shot that buck, and you were after me. I was going to let him go because I still had whatever, a couple of weeks of the season and stuff. But you know, I know you said you were cold and windy, and you know, please shoot him. You know, that thing. Oh, he's a nice one and stuff. You know.
Yep, been there, done that.
Case closed. And you remember when you got to him, you said, "Oh, that's old One Eye. That's that buck that gored them kids down there in Spearfish or something." It was the coolest thing ever, and a great shot. And we must have seen 100 deer that day. That was the greatest place ever.
Yeah, we had a good time.
So,
You're probably my all-time favorite cameraman.
Well, I appreciate that.
Even
though I'm a wimp, I appreciate that. But I'll tell you this: I landed in Whitefish or wherever I flew into to go with, and the warmest it got on that trip was -5. And they were walking around like they were on the beach, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm a wimp, but Man, it was productive.
So, do you guys, either one of y'all, remember can you tell the story of your first bucks?
Yeah, mine was. My first one was in. It was in Don't hold me to the dates and stuff like that, but it was in Vershire, Vermont. Vershire, Vermont, and it was in the '60s, and I was up on a hardwood ridge that in the timber, and it was apparently it was an old homestead because it was up on the mountain and there wasn't any structures there or anything, but there were like 3 or 4 apple trees. I mean, apparently they've been planted in the 1800s or whatever, but they were still bearing fruit, and it was up in the hardwoods. Well, it was a pattern there. It was a shelf, and the deer were coming, working their way up the mountain, and they would come through those little apple trees. Anyway, I was in a ground blind, and again, I'm a kid. I was shooting a 49-pound red wing hunter with sky blue wooden shafts, a bear razor head, etc. But anyway, I was in a ground blind that I'd just built, drug stuff around and stacked around me, type of thing. And this buck came by, and he saw me. I wasn't moving, but he knew something wasn't right, and he turned and started to run. And in my youth and not knowing any better, I mean, I thought he thinks he's getting away, and I swung on him and shot, and I heart shot him running at like 30. I think it was 33 yards or something, and he went down. I remember he weighed 106 pounds, but it was that was my first buck, and again, it's been the beginning of a lifetime of dreams and stuff. But anyway, with a spike horn, by the way.
I want to point this out that this is it's pretty serious. I say pretty serious, but it blows my mind that at one point in my life, I could look at any antler. I had a bunch of antlers, racks, and I could tell you the story behind every one of them, where I shot it, when I shot it, how I shot it, and all that sort of thing. And yet, here I am, 80 years old, and I'll go down to my storage unit and pick up a set of antlers that, where'd I shoot this one? When did I shoot this one? And, and you lose the details that, I mean, life goes on, but the detail, it bothers me not to know where and when all this, comes together. My first, I don't, to be honest with you, my first deer with a bow and arrow was a doe, and I had a 45-pound Shakespeare Nacita bow, and I don't remember the color of the arrows. At least I should. At one point, I did, and I think I had bear razor heads on them. And but this doe, there was a couple of them. It seems like Barry went in the other side. Weren't really putting a push on. We're just kind of walking towards each other. And and here again, I can't remember, it was 2 or 3, but these deer came up and stopped. They were coming by me, and then the one stopped right where I wanted her to, and I drilled her, and that was that. It just fell into place. But my point is, a lot of the details of the memories are fading, or I just can't answer them as easily as I used to be able to. Let's put it that way.
That's old age.
Huh?
That's old age.
I know.
Milk it out, man. Use that for an excuse as long as you can.
But it's interesting, both of those stories involved you guys being instinctive for the shot, and
autopilot.
I think we're losing a lot of that. You guys grew up shooting at squirrels and groundhogs and pine cones instinctively at different distances. You probably didn't think about yardage, and I think we're losing that, and I think a lot of us understand that we're losing that, and we're trying to let our kids, be more free in the woods. But I just thought that was interesting that both of those examples were, instinctive.
Hey, Lanny.
Hey, Bobby.
Have you ever wondered if your feeder went off or if it's even got corn in it?
Yeah, you sit there at night wondering about it.
Moultrie has solved this. This is some high-tech stuff.
Fits on any feeder that helps monitor the level of feed and lets you know if it went off or not. And you can remotely control it.
Can I look at your feeder if we're on the hub?
I really hope not, but we're going to have to talk to the guys at Moultrie about that. This is the biggest thing in feeders since corn.
That's saying a lot.
With Feed Hub, there's no more stressing, no more guessing. This technology allows you to remotely monitor your feeders.
We always say feed safely, do it the right way.
No doubt about it.
To learn more about it, visit moultrieproducts.com/feedhub. It's a great invention.
Unbelievable technology and products brought to us by our buddies at Moultrie. Nosler is known for their bullets, and now they're making suppressors. Nosler suppressors are made for hunting. Adding a Nosler suppressor to your rifle will make you a quieter, more accurate, and more effective hunter. Protect your hearing and disturb less game with a Nosler suppressor. The time to hunt quiet is now. Learn more at nosler.com.
Toxie, you got a comment or a question?
Well, I was just thinking about the whole, again, it's kind of a big picture thing, but and Dudley brought it up in Once Upon a Time. And I think before there was more of the compound bows of today too, there was more just hunting with a bow, like I said, squirrels, rabbits. I mean, I say it, I used to go shoot birds just, as a young kid, that's all I had to do. But there's just the whole picture of like bow hunting versus, gun hunting and all. It just occurred to me that it's just more connective. This whole thing we do in hunting, they talked about why we hunt and all. I mean, we are, we're connecting to ourselves and we're connected to nature. We're all a part of that. So it's just something more connective about taking an animal with your bow and arrow than a gun. Not to take anything away from gun hunting either. I'm great with it, but there's just something deeper. It's not to say we're better or whatever. It's just something deeper. And I guess to Dudley's thing is like when you go beyond just the big antlers and enjoy the purity of shooting a bow, to me, that's the most fun of all.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was a little kid and I was experienced enough to have a variety of hunting situations. And I remember thinking, do I prefer, shooting woodchucks and squirrels or whatever with a 22, or pheasants and ducks with a shotgun, or deer with a rifle, and or again a bow. And I just remember thinking, I much prefer hunting deer over the small game, and the deer are my love, but I want to do it with a bow and arrow type of thing. And again, I don't know how old I was, but 10, whatever. But it was a meaningful memory to me to make that decision, which has gone through the rest of my life.
I agree. Cuz, what you got?
Yeah, I was just going to say, out of all the time we spent together, all the camps we shared, the shooting the recurve traditional, we never talked about it. It never came up because they didn't care. It's just what they did.
That's right.
It wasn't like some kind of statement. The only points they were trying to prove were, let's move this stand here, let's go do that. And to me, it means y'all are even more to me, and everybody down here is a national treasure. I'm so glad we're doing this. I don't care if you're 80 years old. I'm over 70 years old, probably trying to catch you, but you're national treasures because you didn't do any of that for money or fame or anything. You just did it because that's what you guys did.
It's what you were born to do.
Yeah. I can remember, look, these guys moved, I think, from Pennsylvania out there to Montana. They were chiropractors or something. They moved because you could have 17 different things to hunt. If you were a resident of Montana, they got up and moved. Buddy, that's commitment right there. And to us, you're still national treasures and always have been.
Oh, for sure.
Big time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good words there, Cuz. So when I look, I'm gonna give y'all a chance to think about any other questions. So Barry, Gene, we always like to ask our guests a trivia question, and you got a chance to win some fabulous prizes. Yeah, so we'll ask this, and Peter, you can repeat it. We'll give everybody a chance. Barry, Gene, you guys can lean on Cuz for support. He can be your phone-a-friend if you need to ask a question, because he doesn't know about this. He doesn't know this. So I'm going to turn it over to Richie right now, Richie.
All right. Well, I tried to get Tatum to read this, but he wouldn't read it.
Yeah, Richie, it's your job. So come on.
I was trying to pass the ball here.
I'm not sure Tatum can read.
Ooh.
That was a body blow, man.
That was a blow. He doesn't have a mic.
Yeah. Come on, Richie.
So, all right. So the prize winner today is Drew Brookshire. All right. So he's the listener that left a review. No better memory as a kid than going to deer camp with family and friends. The anticipation was as good as Christmas Eve. So, and he wins a Mystery Ranch backpack.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think we got one more of those, guys. So y'all got one more chance at that. So,
Mystery Ranch.
What is Barry and Gene playing for?
All right. So Bobby just passed me this note of what Barry and Gene are playing for. They're playing for a case of Geritol.
Ooh.
No, I think that's some companion shirts, Richie. You're trying to throw me under the bus.
No.
Two
Bobby.
companion shirts.
Disrespectful, man.
Lord, Richie.
I mean, he's got an original companion's
I
hat on.
can prove.
I'm speechless, guys.
I can prove the note here that Bobby just passed me.
Okay,
So.
let's move on, Richie.
All right. So
Richie, we know where that came from.
Yeah, we do.
I always say, Bobby, you love practical jokes, and I'm just telling you, be careful with these two right here.
All right,
All right. So, in the honor of Barry and Gene being twins, when you see a healthy white-tailed doe with two fawns, are they most likely twins or are they siblings?
Could be either.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be.
I gotta
agree.
tell you a quick story though. We had a friend, I won't mention any names, but we had a friend who in Michigan had a deer farm, and he raised these deer, and at one doe had two twin fawns, and he named the fawns.
Wait a
Barry
minute.
and
They were both. The doe was bred by a Boone and Crockett, a pen raised deer, but she had good genetics. See, a lot of people don't realize that the fawn genetics come from both. But anyway, these two fawns.
Anyway, the owner named one button buck Barry, and the other one Gene. And I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 years later, he called and he said, "Hey, bad news." And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Barry killed Gene." It was the peak of the rut or something, and they got in the pen and they got to it, and Barry put his G2 in Gene's throat or some deal.
So,
that's a word of warning.
Were they identical?
Yeah. He fights dirty though.
So do we need to ask the question?
Anymore. It's a heavyweight versus a welterweight or whatever.
That's the question one more time.
Okay, so here's the question once again. So when you see a healthy white-tailed doe with two fawns, are they most likely twins or are they siblings?
I would say most likely twins.
Now
it's been proven that
it's a fact that a white-tailed doe who has quote twin fawns, those fawns can have both different fathers. In other words, it's not necessarily out of the same father. She can be bred.
It's kind of a trick though, because let's say in humans, they probably wouldn't have different fathers, but if they're born on the same day, they're twins. And I mean, so if those deer are born on the same day, they're still twins. I mean, I guess you're saying are they identical twins, whether they separated or whether they separate. So honestly, just about have to be twins.
Well, so according to the MSU Deer Lab, who you love so dearly, and Bronson Strickland, they are not identical twins. It's rare for them to be identical.
But he didn't say identical. He said twins.
Yeah, but his answer: they are not twins. They are simply siblings.
Right.
But they are born on the same day.
Well, the confusion is that they are non-identical human twins. So
right.
The price
the
is
key
wrong,
is
Bobby.
if they're identical or not.
Yeah.
Could they have two different fathers?
That's confusing.
They
That's a
could
very-
have two
They
different
could
fathers.
have two different fathers.
I think throw the
Well,
question. out.
non-identical twins are technically siblings, right?
That's
I mean,
what I'm saying.
What?
Well, Daniel and
Yeah,
Neil
Daniel
are twins.
and Neil are siblings.
They're twins.
Yeah. So
Twins are siblings.
And twins are
let's
siblings.
send them the companion shirts. We'll get Bronson to
Yeah, we'll cut all
explain
the
this
argument
to
out.
us.
But that's,
Speaking
I've
of
got,
Bronson.
very
I've got a
confusing.
question.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking
Lanny,
of Bronson, thank
Lanny
you,
and I
Dudley.
have a question.
fraternal twins.
Yes.
And twins.
Does the moon phase affect
There-
deer movement,
There we go.
In your opinion.
in your opinion?
My opinion is, and here again, don't take this wrong, but I don't pay it that much attention to the moon anymore, because I don't want to go out there and they say, well, it's going to be, and the same with fishing, the saloon on tables and all that sort of thing. I don't want to go out there saying it's going to be a crummy day in the woods. I don't want to know. I'm going anyways. And I don't want to go with a negative attitude because some chart says me today, today's not going to be a good day to hunt. I don't want to know that. So I'm going anyways. Let's put it that way. I very seldom. I mean, I'll pay attention with full moons and all that sort of thing. But that being said, it's not going to affect
Let me pick it up from there. The fact that, I mean, the phases of the moon absolutely have a direct whatever result on deer movement, the tides, and et cetera, et cetera. And I look at it like in a full moon, that you will get more daytime, middle of the day movement. But as Gene said, I'm not one of those who, I think it puts a seed of negativity in your brain if you look at the moon charts and plan your hunt around, I can sleep in this morning because it's not going to get good until 11 o'clock. No. I mean, there's deer out there that don't read the moon charts type of thing. I want to put in as much time as I find necessary. You're not going to kill them sleeping in type of thing. So
That's right.
Again, I don't like to go in, in other words, I'll look at the calendar or the moon phases and say, okay, the 15th, the 16th or whatever is going to be a full moon. Okay, we can expect better midday movement there than we can in a new moon type of thing. But I have
another thing you got to pay attention to the fact that every deer out there, every wild deer out there has a personality, and you get some big bucks or mature bucks or whatever you want to call them that are lovers and others are fighters. Two bucks get in the same situation and the outcome is not necessarily the same just because their personality is different. I mean, there's bucks they'll come in looking for a fight, and other bucks will turn and, hey, I'd rather not have the confrontation. But they each have their own personality.
It also blows me away on how much they learn at an early age. And I've seen, year and a half or even button bucks do stuff that, again, it's nature, but who taught them that? In other words, one of my favorite examples is a story I tell about being in the stand, and I saw it was a 5x4, and he was probably a three-year-old buck, and he was 80 yards away, and he was walking right to me, and all of a sudden he laid down, the peak of the rut. He laid down, and he laid there for like 30 seconds, stood up and walked another 10 yards. So now he's 70 yards away. He lays down again. All right. 2 minutes later, stands up, walks another 10, 15 yards towards me. And it took him, he bedded down. If I remember right, it was 6 or 8 times in that 80 yards. He bedded down. And all of a sudden it dawned on me what it was. He was using the wind currents to check he was walking. He wanted to wait until he had a confirmation from his nose, his sense of smell, to let him know that it was safe for him to move forward another 10 yards type of thing. Like I say, he was using that wind for his safety. Now, who teaches it? I mean, here's a buck that's only, say 3 years old and stuff. I mean, and as they get older, once they hit full maturity and stuff, 5.5, 6.5 years old, they even become more inclined to use their, in other words, I always refer to them as slow walkers. They'll slow down, and not every move they make is directed towards messages that they receive through their sense of smell, eyes, ears, and sense of smell, but mostly sense of smell and stuff. They depend on, they learn, and they adapt.
I'll tell you a quick story that it just didn't happen to me, but a good friend of ours watched this happen, and I didn't realize it until he explained it. But anyway, he was sitting on this ridge in Iowa during the rut, and he said there was I think he said it was like a 2.5 or 3.5 year old buck was chasing this one doe all over that ridge, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for quite a while. And he says all of a sudden the buck just kind of ran out of gas, and he stopped, and the doe stopped, and this buck laid down. All right. And he said it laid down, and then he laid down like a dog sleeping with his head on the ground, all 4 feet stretched out, and he was not bedded, but laying him flat on his side on the ground. And he says, I thought he died. He says he wasn't moving. And he says, I studied him with binoculars, and there was like 40 or I can't remember, 30, 40 yards away. But he says, I saw him laying there, and I studied him with binoculars. I could see his chest, or his body. He was inhaling, exhaling. But he says, all of a sudden, he says, that deer he was dreaming about that doe. And like a dog, when a dog has a dream, he'll dream about chasing a cat or whatever, and their feet do one of these numbers. And he says that deer was dreaming about chasing that doe. And he actually, he said he was dreaming. There was no doubt about it, and here again, wow. Do deer dream? I guess.
The more you
look,
never
thought about it.
If you look and study and, think about what you're seeing, get back to the think stuff, I use this analogy too. A lot of there's so much interesting stuff that you can learn. It's just common knowledge if you think about it enough. And I use this as an example. People say, why did deer snort? Well, if he snorted, they heard you. Well, yes, and maybe no. But the snort is to blow the mucus out of their nasal passages and moisten the orifice of the nose, because a moist orifice will pick up scent molecules better than a dry, So in other words, you see a deer, I mean, all of us have seen a deer stand there licking his nose type of thing while he thinks he might have smelled something, but they'll lick their nose to moisten that orifice to pick up the scent molecules. Stuff like that, hearing noises and deer sneezing and wheezing and, how these different pieces of the puzzle that you can, change your hunting, your adaptation, to the situation and become a better hunter and stuff, Wow. But anyway, it's really interesting, but you got to pay attention.
What else should we be asking? Cuz I'm looking at you. What else should we ask?
There's no end to it.
Lanny.
Yeah, there's lots.
What did y'all learn? Cuz, did you learn anything?
I already knew a lot about them. I used to wear them out. I'd ask them questions. That's why I was always the cameraman that went with the Wensels. I did this countless times. And,
Toxic.
I remember, you can get into situations where when we were guiding guys, we would kind of mess with their minds,
Imagine that.
Yeah. I can't remember who the guy was. We were guiding this guy. Oh, I know who it was. I won't say his name. He was from Virginia. Good guy, good deer hunter. Anyway, we hadn't hunted with him for a whole lot. And, seems like he and I were on this one side of a ridge, and we were kind of scouting, if I remember right, looking for a good place for a stand for him. And he was with us. And Barry was across the draw. Barry was across the draw, and all of a sudden Barry, whistled. He whistled. That's another thing, getting old. I can't whistle anymore. I used to be a really good whistler. I can't whistle with a hoot anymore. But anyway, Barry whistles. and he whistled to me, and I whistled back, and he points at the ground and does one of these, and I said, "There's a scrape." I said to this guy, "There's a scrape over there," and then Barry pointed up ahead, and he goes like this, and I said, "There's a rub up ahead," and I don't know what made I don't know what made me do it, but I whistled back at Barry a bird call, it was a bird call, and Barry shakes his head no and whistles back to me. He whistles back to me, and I turned to this guy and I said to him, Barry said it's mostly evening movement. And this guy said, he started stuttering. He said, when did he say that? And I says, just now. I said, when we're in the woods, we talk bird talk. And this guy, this guy bought it, man. He thought he was really fascinated. Hey, these guys really know their stuff, anyway, we when we're in the woods, we talk bird talk.
Yeah, we used to mess with their brains a lot and stuff, and
It was always about fun with them more than it was deer knowledge for me. Because
absolutely.
we live in Mississippi. We don't live in Montana or hunt the Milk River. But I can remember they were visiting in town with us, and we took them to a steakhouse over in Columbus one night, and they had our waitress convinced that I was Dom DeLuise. I was 300 pounds at the time, and I could see the resemblance. They were trying to get a free meal, and that lady asked me to sign something before we left.
I don't doubt
It's
it.
Dom DeLuise. It was endless and relentless.
Well, that's
Nobody
what I was,
had. Nobody
something
had.
happened to
Bo Jackson, yeah. No, I was hunting with Bo Jackson. The younger guys don't even know who he is, but he Heisman Trophy winner, and then he won the All-Star game and all. He played baseball and football and stuff. But anyway, we went. His feet were cold, and we went in the sporting goods store, and he was trying on boots. And this is at the peak of his fame, type of thing. And I mean, every kid in the world knew who Bo Jackson was. And anyway, my videos had just come out, and anyway, the line was formed for autographs and stuff. And finally, some lady comes up to me and she says, "I know you, the movies." And and there's my video on the shelf right there, type of thing, in a sporting goods store. And she says, "Could I have your autograph?" And I looked at Bo and I said, "Hey, check it out, man. She wants my autograph, And she says, you are Dom DeLuise, aren't you?" Anyway,
I something happened to me about a month ago. I thought was pretty cool. I was going out to see my wife, and it's rural, paved roads, but rural. And there's a lot of couples, a guy and his wife, or a guy and a lady and a man. And they have two dogs. Each of them has a dog on a leash, and they're walking up the side of the road. And and I've done it multiple times since, but the first time I did, I pulled up alongside this couple, and I rolled the window down, and I said, "Hey," I said, "did those two ever fight?" And the guy says, "No, not really. They're pretty good buddies." And I said, I was talking to the dogs. And I thought it was pretty funny, but the woman didn't think it was funny as I did.
Yeah, Landy, you're not laughing there, Landy. Come on.
His mouth will get him in trouble one day.
Toxic, did you learn anything?
No, that I didn't already know, but it reinforced something. And again, I'm looking beyond the obvious.
I just learned that when I'm in the bow woods, I'm gonna try to pay more attention. I'm not gonna just hang a stand on sign. I'm gonna hang a stand on a trail. I'm gonna try to look at the terrain and just make my shot easier. I'm hunting with a compound these days. I'm probably going to not get as high in the tree. And I learned that from them today.
I tell the story about this one place that I had a little juniper cedar tree right on a fence line. And I went in, I had a ghillie suit on, complete full camo type of thing, standing on the ground. And it was 5 does come walking by at 12 yards, and they looked when they looked over and saw me, they snorted and exploded and stuff, right? Well, just as a trial basis to try to learn something, I took a ladder section I mean, the top section of a ladder stand, and I measured it from the ground to where my feet were 48 inches. I was 4 feet off of the ground level. And I climbed up in that same stand, I don't know, 3-4 days later. Here comes the same deer. They walked up broadside 12 yards, turned their head, looked at me, chewing the cud, turned and walked away and stuff. Did not spook at all. And what I learned from that was light intensity. People would say, how come they spook when you're standing on the ground, versus when you're elevated 4 feet? And it's light intensity. When you're standing on the ground, you're a solid, and that they look at you and light's not passing through you. Whereas if you're elevated 4 feet or 5 feet up off of the ground, light, they can see underneath of that block of solid, and they will accept that and not react the same way and so forth. People would not believe the big bucks I've killed where my feet were only 6. Well, that last booner I shot, my feet were 6 feet off of the ground, type of thing. Now, yes, I was cut myself back in a hole in the cedar tree, so I had good background cover all around me, but I was still only 6 feet off of the ground. And I've killed multiple big bucks where my feet were 8 feet, 10 feet off the ground. I would much rather be in a thick tree with some cover at low elevation rather than be 22 or 23 feet up in a tree that looked like a telephone pole with nothing around me, that thing. So as I said, I used to get that comment a lot when I ran those boot camps about, how low some of my stands were. So as long as you've got a good consistent wind direction, and good cover around you, it's an excellent, thing to know and stuff, how you can adapt to it. But anyway,
Good stuff.
I tell you what
That's
I've
good
enjoyed.
stuff.
We've said the word, our guests have said the word booner more than any other podcast, and that gets me excited. To
You
think
know
about
it
it.
does. Be it BC himself,
Bobby's a booner.
Yeah.
Bobby and Crockett.
So I have learned something listening to them. Though one of them made, and I don't know if it was Barry or Gene, but one of them made the comment that large antlers don't necessarily equal to a
absolutely.
super smart deer. And
I
equate
mean,
it
we
to a
all
doe.
know that, but we lose track of it sometimes.
Yes,
You know?
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, because you remember that spike at Portland that was like 18 inches wide that we couldn't get killed?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that was a brainiac.
He was a brainiac.
That's right. No telling how old he was.
No.
Well, it is what it is. I don't get so fired up about the Boone and Crockett stuff because we live in Mississippi. They live in a different
once
place.
you kill a state record, it's not
Yeah.
as big a deal anymore.
And the only reason, but I do plant corn because during December you can squint and it looks like Iowa. But we don't. We hunt in a different world.
We do.
And the fact they moved out there to do that's old school right there, buddy.
I just got to say, I've been trying to get this in, but just for everybody to point it out for everyone is that, to me, the most endearing thing about these two is that it teaches us a lesson that you can be the very best at what you do and not take yourself so damn serious.
Mm-hmm.
And they're always having fun. They're always making fun. I mean, it's kind of like Daddy said one time when I was kind of pouting about everybody picking on me. He said, son, if nobody picks on you, you ain't got no damn friends. Mm-hmm. And so, it's never a dull moment when you're going, even today, I mean, at every moment, especially if you throw them in there with cuz.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody, that out there can learn from that, not to take themselves quite so serious and just have fun all the time.
So look, I may end up regretting this, but I have one last question that didn't go asked that I feel like I need to ask.
One last question.
Can one of y'all, or maybe both of y'all, tell us your favorite hunting story?
It's like anything else in life. You retain certain memories for certain reasons, and some of the best hunting stories are moments of misery, or I failed, or everything came together, just the opposite, good, bad. And that's historic.
agree.
I mean, when cavemen sat around telling hunting stories, that's what they did. That's how they entertained themselves, And I see these kids sitting up and stands and they're playing games in the blind and hey, wake me up when you see when you want me to shoot, Dad, type of deal. But anyway, it's just there's no really real answer to it, I mean, because there's so many degrees of satisfaction. Hunting, by the way, not only is it an instinct, but it's all about personal satisfaction. What one
Memories,
person
I'll agree with Gene. In other words, your favorite hunting story might not even include the taking of a big buck or whatever it may be. But I mean, some of my most private memories or favorite memories over the years involved multiple situations or whatever that all added up to an experience that is beyond belief, type of thing. So as I said, I'd have to think about it as far as which one would be a top memory. And I have to say, a lot of it is going to be dependent on family and friends and etc. In other words, a great hunt that you had with your dad or your grandpa or whatever type of thing.
Big time right there.
Not necessarily you got anything that wasn't a big buck or whatever, but it was something that you'll remember for the rest of your life.
Surely it was spending 7 days with me on the Milk River. I cannot believe that y'all didn't throw that as one of your top memories.
I know,
because it's clearly one of my top memories.
Yeah, that's because you didn't do the.
I remember going to your house and you pointing that big buck up hanging on the wall.
Yeah, he shows everybody that deer, but he won't talk. He acts like it isn't a big deal around everybody. But he shows it off. So
well, where you failed me, cuz, is the fact that you didn't do any of them dishes in the sink.
I know. I filmed them all.
That's what they brought you out there for.
That's right. That video is about to resurface, just so you'll know.
Good.
That is as classic event of a video as you'll ever see. Inside the look of where the Wensels were staying.
Do you still have that, you think?
Oh, yeah, absolutely we have that.
No kidding.
So now,
filed, I'm sure.
Now would be a good time to point out that on the Go app, the Mossy Oak Go app, some of these old hunts, cuz that you filmed, put together, they're being recycled right now. I think it's Mossy Oak Classics, if I'm not mistaken.
I looked at one of him.
I just did one.
Yeah, I just looked at one on my phone on the way over, before I came over here.
So guys, do yourself a favor, go to that Mossy Oak Go app and check this out. It's a lot of fun. So
it's actually about just so you know, it's the over-the-top network. You can watch it on your television at home too. So.
I don't know how to do that, but I'll trust you when you.
Same way you look at ESPN or any of those other apps.
So when I look around the room, guys, I see a lot of smiles. These guys have meant a lot to this place. They've meant a lot to the hunting industry
100%.
through the years, and it's just been our pleasure, guys, to have you. Through the magic of the internet, it beats. It's the next best thing to be in there with you. But we wish you were sitting here on the couch with us and laughing and telling these stories in person. But it sure is great to see you guys.
It's been great just being here and doing this. It's
it's like going to a reunion where you catch up and seeing guys you haven't seen for a long time.
Big time.
And just memories, good memories.
I think
I thank you for that, making it happen.
I think if they'll abide us at some point, we should have just stories. We're not going to ask or talk anymore about whitetail wisdom or anything. We just want to hear stories. We got
a bunch of them. I tell you.
Yes, they do. It's endless. I'd pay the admission for that one more than anything.
Yeah.
But the problem with that, is Barry's stories end up 7 or 8 minutes for one laugh, and it's like I'm like a guy with a pump shotgun. My laughs come under 2 minutes and then go on. But he milks it out for one laugh.
He's more like Cuz is the master at stringing it out.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. I hope we do
All right.
this on your 90th birthday.
There you go.
Do that.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
This has been our honor, guys.
Yeah.
We're just so impressed with y'all.
Oh,
We
my
just
gosh.
have the utmost respect, and I'm
Well,
looking at
thank
Toxie. I know he's
Well, I mean,
those are
yeah,
his
and we,
words.
you know, as much as they'll let us and we work together with, I think it's a good age to give the world a little more dose of them and what they're all about, all the way
Yeah.
around. Just not just hunting, but life in general. So
Yeah.
Yep.
expect to see more. You might get bugged to do an interview, or just expect something further, because I think everybody here would love to be sure people get to hear about it in today's world.
Yep. So, guys, I'm looking around the room. There's Mossy Oak yesterday, and when this airs, it'll be about 2 weeks from today. I
Around
suppose.
Thanksgiving.
But the Woodsman series is out now.
It is.
And,
Yes,
I mean,
it
and
is.
here's two great woodsmen.
They are.
But so, guys, if y'all
best.
will go to mossoak.com and check out the Woodsman series, there's some new warm clothes. Dudley, they look really good. They have some good warm stuff. And I will say that if you guys, you ought to go to mossoak.com every day. There's new articles that pop up on there, some information. There is a newsletter, The Branch, you can sign up for, and you can sign up for the Gamekeeper Field Notes. So you can keep up with what's going on at Mossy Oak. Because what about today?
We will.
Yes, sir.
They're all out hunting while we did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby.
Well,
And I'll add this too. I've always considered Mossy Oak as a business. It's a family. I mean, obviously it's not all family, but you guys, the people you hire, the people you work with, they're hired for the right reasons, and they got their heads on straight. And it's doing something that you love. Let's put it that way, more than it is a good business.
No doubt about that.
Amen. Yep.
All right,
It's been a good ride. It's been a good ride.
That check will be in your mailbox in
Yeah,
about
yeah.
4 days. I can promise you for saying that.
Oh, I was going. You'd rather me wire it or mail it?
all right, guys. This has been fun. Richie, please wake up over there, Richie. We have any
price
other
is
business that we
wrong,
need to?
Bobby.
Do we have any other business? Okay.
The Crooked Hat Chronicles.
Ah, no doubt. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll love to tell everybody about that.
No doubt.
When the time's right. So that's exciting, guys. I'm looking around the room. Is there anything else that we need to do? Toxic, can you think of anything?
Not for now.
Yep.
Not for now.
Like-
Set a date
I'm
to have
good.
them back and
Yeah.
tell stories.
That's right.
That's right.
Part 2 or part 3.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank y'all for being
Yeah,
here.
appreciate y'all.
Thank
Appreciate
y'all
what
so
y'all
much.
do
Big
for
time.
the hunting industry
thank
and
you.
Mossy Oak and everything
I
else.
know you said be careful about throwing it around too much, but we love you guys forever and ever.
There you go.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Say goodbye,
Take care,
Dudley.
buddy.
Goodbye, Dudley.
Get us out of here, Richie and John.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast. And be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine, and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.